My friend pressured me to cheat on my fiancé. As it turned out, my husband found out. Show me your friend, and I'll tell you who you are. I never took that saying seriously, but after what Melody and I did, it's become my motto. I don't even know what happened or how it happened, but it did happen. I still can't believe I let Melody talk me into it. I was forced to do something that would haunt me until I was 6 feet under the ground. I know you may think I am overreacting or exaggerating, but believe me when I say this, I am not. As it stands now, I have nothing and nobody to my name. Even as I type this, I am still shocked as to how everything turned out. Ladies and gentlemen, the three of us, me, myself, and I thought it was a mistake to take on board the advice and suggestions of the person we called a friend. The aftermath was disastrous. I can't even begin to describe how I feel now. I can't even get angry at Melody because if only I had been more careful and behaved more like a wife instead of a silly teenage girl, none of this would have happened. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm writing this from my car, which is far from comfortable. I could go on at length about what happened, but I want you to know the full story. Then I'd like you to judge for yourselves. There's not much to judge, but I'd like you to do it anyway. It's currently 12:30 a.m. morning. I have a meeting in the next 9 hours, and the outcome will determine how the rest of my life will go. Let me take you back to the beginning, when and how I met the woman who made me lose everything over a silly and stupid bet. I don't even know how I would get through this whole story because I would always cry each time I remember everything that has happened to this very moment. Now my tears are of anger. I really hope I can keep my emotions in check as I write this. Let's get started. My name is Sarah. I was the only girl in a family that already had 5 boys. I was definitely spoiled. We lived in a house with a lot of boys, and I have to say, it was pretty fun. But I always felt like I needed a sister around. I wanted someone I could talk to about girl stuff. So you can imagine how excited I was when I met Melody and I hit it off straight away. She was a blonde, while I was a brunette. We were the unpopular, uncool kids at school, and we got teased by the guys. But that all changed when we went to college. We both got into Florida State University. I studied theater arts, while Melody studied psychology. I won't go into more detail, but I'll tell you what happened next. The courses we studied in college had a big impact on our college and dating lives. We had this thing, or rather the pact we made with each other, and it really worked until we both graduated. The pact was that we wouldn't date until a certain age. To be honest, I don't know why that pact was even made in the first place. We didn't have any luck with guys until our final year in college, and that was mostly because we both decided to start going to parties and having adventures like college students do. It didn't really affect our studies, but I do think Melody changed after all that. She was always quiet and reserved, but once we started going to parties, she started to have a wild side. She would always come back to our house wasted and high, or even not come back at all. I don't want to make it seem like I was the one who changed though. I don't want to give the impression that I thought Melody was the bad one and I was the good one. In fact, I felt like I was the bad one. I could control myself and hold down alcohol, but not Melody. She was like a bird that they let out of its cage after years of being inside it. She just wanted to do and try everything. If I decide to talk about all the things Melody and I did in college, you would not even be able to drop your phone or PC until the next day. So let's move on to the next part of my downfall. After we graduated, we both moved into our own place and started working. She worked during the day and I worked at a bar at night. I chose those 2 options because I wanted to. I've always loved children, but I also love the nightlife. So I figured, why not have 2 of them? Things were going really well for both of us, except we couldn't seem to find a decent man to enter a relationship with. Andre and Lou changed everything. Melody didn't get along at first. They were so hostile towards each other that even a stranger could feel it. Andre and I, on the other hand, fell head over heels. Melody wasn't happy about it at first, and even Lou wasn't convinced. But after 4 dates and 2 fights, we were all sitting in a restaurant together. We went to a star restaurant for a double date. Everything was going well, and then Andre proposed. Of course, I said yes. Why wouldn't I? Lewis proposed to Melody at my wedding. Before you say that he should have waited until the next day or that he stole the spotlight from me, he didn't. I actually wanted him to do it on that day. She helped plan everything, and she said yes. Honestly, that just made the wedding 100 times better. Now, this is where it gets interesting. I got married before Melody, but I convinced Andre to have our honeymoon at the same time and place as Melody and Lois. I know it was too much, and I don't think it was a good idea. Even though I wanted to do that, Andre was sweet and agreed to my crazy request. We postponed our honeymoon until after Melody and Lewis's wedding. We both went to Rome for our honeymoon and it was really nice. We visited many beautiful sites such as the Trevi Fountain and the Pantheon. We spent some weeks there. We went back to work after the honeymoon, as you probably guessed. I left my job at the bar and focused on being a teacher. It was pretty dull, to be honest. Don't get me wrong, I love kids, but when you see the same thing every day for 6 months, it gets a bit boring. Melody, on the other hand, kept her job and seemed to enjoy it more. Now I was married, but I don't know why or how that was even possible. She loved it. We always met up for lunch 3 times a week and dinner with our husbands once a month. It became like a ritual for us, and we loved it. Before I go further, it's important to note that I already had a son for my husband, while Melody and Lewis had decided not to have kids. It was mostly Melody's decision, and Lewis loves her too much to say no. That alone should have been my excuse to not go along with Melody's plan. I should have told her that I was a mother and wife. I should have fought harder, but that's the problem. I couldn't fight harder because I didn't fight at all. I just let Melody talk me into it and I swallowed everything. Line and sinker, how weak was I? How stupid? How dumb was I? You know it's easier to say yes to a stupid and dangerous plan if it's coming from someone you trust. Sorry, I digress. I'm just so upset that I threw caution to the wind and ended up here, typing my life mistakes to strangers online so that they would learn from my mistakes. But enough of all that. Back to on one of our usual lunch dates, Melody came in looking really happy. I couldn't work out why I'd placed our orders while she was on her phone talking to her receptionist. I looked at her closely to see if Lou had bought her some new jewelry, but there was nothing new on her. I looked outside thinking that she'd probably got a new car, but I saw her blue Mercedes. I noticed her Mercedes-Benz was parked across the street. I thought maybe she had been promoted, but she was now the head psychologist at the hospital she works in, so a promotion was not possible anymore. There was only one option left, and that was her being pregnant. I started smiling, happy that our children would become best friends, and maybe even end up as a couple. I was so lost in thought that Melody had to tap my hand to get my attention. I apologized for spacing out and said it was fine. I'd taken too long on my call, but it was over and our lunch date could properly begin. While we ate, Melody talked about her work and her patients. I knew about doctor-patient confidentiality, but I'd never told anyone. I'm pretty sure I'd do the same if it were the other way round. We talked and laughed until 3:30 p.m. It was time for me to leave. I was just finishing my drink when Melody reached out and grabbed my hand. I was surprised, so I kept the glass of juice down. I asked her what was wrong. She had a big smile on her face as she told me that she had some wonderful news to share with me. I laughed and told her that I already knew he was pregnant. I was about to tell her that I hoped the child would be a girl when I saw the look on her face and stopped. She had this confused and slightly disgusted look on her face. When I asked her what was wrong, she didn't respond. She just said, "Who told you that ridiculous lie?" I was speechless, so she wasn't pregnant, but why was she so happy? I apologized and explained that I assumed she was pregnant because of the way she had been acting since she arrived. I also told her that I didn't see any new car I also ruled out the possibility of her wearing jewelry. I was sure she couldn't be promoted at her job, so that was another option off the table. After eliminating these 2 possibilities, I was left with the baby. But if that's also wrong, then what is the matter? After listening to me, she smiled, took my left hand and placed it between both her hands before saying the words. I still can't get those words out of my mind. I just picked up my glass of juice when she said them. I want us to sleep with each other's husband. As soon as she said it, the rest of my drink went down her face. What the hell? Why would you say that? She yelled, but not so loud. She started wiping her face while I sat there looking at her, thinking she must be joking. She had to be, I told myself. Why would she say something so silly and unreasonable? You know, a normal person would have laughed at Melody, got up, left the restaurant and never spoken of it again. But then there's me. The character who was so unbelievably stupid just sat there and waited for Melody to explain. I mean, what other explanation did I need? It was a stupid idea and a dangerous one. Part of me wanted to shun Melody and warn her never to bring it up, but then another part of me wanted to know how and why she came up with it. I finally asked Melody about it. She said that she heard about it from her colleague. Her colleague and her sister had done it with their boyfriends. They did it to test their loyalty. Did you see the keyword there? No, all right, I will tell you the keyword. Was it boyfriends or husbands? My supposed best friend was suggesting something similar and just as stupid. People of this fine earth, what did I do after Melody finished explaining everything to me? I told her that I would think about it and give her my response the next day. As I lay in bed with my husband, I actually thought about how it would feel to share the same bed with Louis. I wasn't a bad wife or anything, but after having that conversation with Melody, my curiosity got the better of me. The next day, I called her up and told her I was going to go through with her plan. She was so happy that she squealed into the phone. She said she would text me the details later. She was really happy to tell me what was going on, but before she hung up she said she'd text me the details later. I was lying in bed thinking about what she'd said, and 4 words kept coming to mind: what have I got myself into? I got her text later that day. She said we'd become impossible. That our husbands would come to complain to us but eventually take comfort in us. Melody's husband would come to complain to me about Melody, but over time I would take advantage of his vulnerability and sleep with him. Pause. How in the name of all things beautiful did I even think that any of this was okay? How was it even okay to think about letting your friend seduce your husband? I would have sworn that Melody was a witch if I didn't know her so well. I agreed, and we were meant to start the next day. Now I know my husband, and I know how to push his buttons. I did all the things that Andre didn't. He made it seem like Melody was the only one he could complain to about me. The same thing was happening to Louis. After 3 days, I got a call from Louis complaining that Melody had suddenly changed. He even told me that he suspected she was cheating on him, but I told him that she wouldn't do that to him. Before long, Lou and I started meeting up outside to talk about Melody. I think Andre and Melody also started meeting up. I always meet secretly to go about our plan and to see how everything is going. It was difficult to treat my husband in such a manner, but it was amusing to hear about it from a third party. One day, Melody called to tell me it was time to seduce and sleep with them again. I didn't see any problem with the plan. I didn't tell her to stop, I just agreed and waited for my usual meetup with Louis, asking him to come over to the house. Andre was going to be there too. I had the house to myself all night as I dropped my son off with my parents. When Louis arrived, I'd already got a bottle of wine out and poured a glass for each of us. After his 3rd cup, Lou was already drunk but not too drunk to know when to stop. We were both on it. We were chatting on the floor when we started leaning in close to each other. This was it, I thought. Lou would remember how much he loved Melody and stop. But he didn't. Neither did I. What was going on? Why wasn't I stopping? I didn't stop when our lips met. I didn't stop when we got up from the floor. And I didn't stop until I was completely unaware of my surroundings. I woke up the next morning, but there was no sign of Louis as I tried to recall what had happened. I heard the tap running in the bathroom and noticed that I was completely naked. I immediately reached for the bedsheet to tie around my body. I suddenly remembered what had happened the night before. I'd cheated on my husband. I got up and went to the bathroom. I knocked on the door and said, "Louis, come outside." We need to talk about last night. But before I could finish my sentence, my husband came out of the bathroom, tying it. I saw Andre was back so soon and he was drying his hair with a towel wrapped around his waist. I was thinking about what had happened and why he was back so soon. Andre interrupted me and asked what had happened to Lou. I told him nothing. Andre had called me last night to talk about Melody and the gift he wanted to get. I dozed off on him, so I felt bad and wanted to finish the conversation. I lied. He looked at me and down at my hand before saying, "But you don't have your phone." I froze, but then remembered that I was wearing one of my AirPods, so I pointed to it and said, I was leaving a voice message for him. I know. It was a stupid thing to do. But somehow it worked and soon Andre left for work. When he left, I called Melody but she didn't pick up. I tried again but it went to voicemail instead. I was really worried. What if Lou saw Andre driving out of his house and confronted Melody? I immediately took a shower and drove to Melody's. I noticed that her car wasn't there, so I went to her workplace. I was really happy to see her car, but even happier to see Melody, who seemed fine. I pulled her aside and asked where her phone was. She told me she'd left it at home. She had an early appointment she couldn't miss. I was really relieved, but then I told her that we needed to talk. She asked me to wait for her since it was almost her lunch break, and I agreed. Once Melody was free, we went to a cafe, sat down, and I told her what had happened. She didn't seem bothered or upset, her face just went blank. She didn't say anything. She just got up, slapped me and left. I'm still sitting in my car in front of the cafe. My left cheek still stings from the slap. I'm afraid to go home. What if Andre finds out? What if Melody tells him? Did Melody not go through with her plan? Where was Lise? Guys, that's where I'll stop for now. I'll update you all if. Guys, it's me again. I have an update for you. It's quite a lot, but I promised to give you an update, so here it is. The last time I wrote something, I had just been slapped by Melody in a cafe. I didn't know if I should go home or not after an hour of just sitting. I decided to go home in my car. When I got home, Andre was there, but something felt off. He wasn't his usual self. He seemed distant and cold towards me. What if he knows now? I asked myself. I couldn't bring myself to ask him, so I just let it be. After dinner, Andre took a bath and got into bed. The next thing I knew, I was cuddling him and I was confused, so I asked him if he was okay. He said he was fine and that he just had a rough day at work, but being with me just made everything better. I smiled and let out a breath. I didn't know I was holding him, and he didn't know I was safe. The next day was normal with Andre. The moment he left for work, I tried to call Melody and was surprised when she answered. I said, "Mel, we need to talk." Mel was a name I always used when I wanted to fix things between us. We agreed to meet at the park, and when we saw each other, I started crying. Before I knew it, Melody was crying too. She was crying too. She apologized for slapping me and told me she'd slept with Andre. I was shattered, but at least now she'd call it quits to this silly game of hers. She did. I asked her if Lou was strange to her, but she said no. Melody said that Lou had been acting normal, as though nothing had happened. Was the main reason she slapped me? She was hurt that LS could easily keep his infidelity from her. I know she was actually trying to play the victim, but when I told her about Andre, she kept quiet. We talked for another 30 minutes before going back to our houses. I finally thought that everything was fine. I was so wrong. One day, I got a call from Louis asking me to meet him. I didn't want to, but he threatened to tell Andre what happened, so I had no choice. I told him to meet me at the park the next day. When Louis came, he looked terrible, his eyes were puffy, his hair was messy, and he seemed off. He seemed a bit disheveled and out of sorts. I asked him what was going on, but he wouldn't say. After about 3 minutes of silence, he grabbed my hands and said, "I can't take this anymore, Sarah. I need you. I took my hands back and shifted a bit before asking him what he meant. He told me that he'd been struggling to think straight. Since that night, he said he'd tried to forget everything, but he couldn't. He went down on his knees to beg me. I couldn't take it anymore. I just ran to my car and drove home, not caring that I'd left him on his knees in a public place. I didn't know what to do. Should I call Melody? Would she even believe me? The guy who worshipped the ground she walked was asking me to be his no-no. She wouldn't believe me. I can't even believe it, but what do I do? I was so lost in thought that I didn't hear Andre walk in. I'd already put our son to sleep, so it was just me in the living room. Andre came in and gave me a peck on the cheek. As soon as he came close, I had a feeling, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it, so I just let it go. That night was so passionate for both of us that I immediately forgot about Lou and his confession. The next day was a Sunday, and Andre told me he'd be away on a work trip for the next 4 days. I didn't have any issues with it, and it would give me time to think about Louis and his issues. Melody and I didn't talk for some days, and I was worried Louis told her how he felt about me. I really wished everything would just go back to normal, but sadly that would never work. On the day of Andre's work trip, he left for the airport around 8:12 a.m. So you can imagine my surprise when LS called to see me at his place. I said I wasn't interested, and then he offered to take me somewhere else. I realized that I had to turn him down once and for all, so I decided to meet him. We met at what seemed to be a small bed and breakfast. I told him that I didn't want to be there, but he said all he wanted to do was talk and that once it's over I would never hear from him. I didn't understand what he meant, but I agreed with the others that what I saw and heard was not what I expected. Melody was snuggling with my husband, who was meant to be on a work trip. As soon as she saw me, she jumped off him and asked me what I was doing there, and why I was there with her husband. To speak, LS slammed the door and ordered us both to sit down and keep quiet. Andre got up and walked up to me and said, "Your husband, the same husband you allowed your friend to seduce?" I was taken aback. He knew, yes, I know, matter of fact, we both know. He said while pointing to Louis, "You both thought we wouldn't figure out a pattern. There was no way you both would suddenly start acting up at the same time. We wanted to know what the goal was, and you showed us. You had your steamy session with Louis that night. I saw it coming, but I wanted to see how far you'd actually go." When he said those words, tears filled my eyes, and I started apologizing. "What are you sorry for? You didn't sleep with Louis. You see, unlike you, Louis has some self-respect." "Respect? I was the one you slept with, but I wore Louis's clothes and smelt like him. Luckily, you were too drunk to even notice." Upon hearing this, Melody started laughing. "You're lying. I was with you the whole night. Remember?" She said, "No, my dear. You fell asleep and I went home." "Owen, did you tell her I've been trying to seduce you for a while now?" When he said that, I looked at Melody, but she didn't say anything. "Your friend here has been trying to lure me to bed. She came up with this plan as the perfect way to get me, but she wanted to keep me forever. I lied because I was going to leave you for her. She got the divorce papers signed and left Louis. I'm back to the same situation I asked about earlier, your husband. I'm sorry, but this marriage is over and I'm taking my son with me. He walked out with Louis, and I haven't seen him since. I still have the divorce papers, but I can't sign them. I don't know what happened to Melody after all that. To be honest, I really hope she never finds happiness again. That's all, guys. There's no more update. I lost my son, husband, and house, and all this mess. Guess I deserved it, though. My husband is planning to ruin my life over a minor mistake I made. I don't know why he thinks it's okay to do what he's planning to do. I cheated on him, but I guess it was bound to happen eventually. He's a mommy's boy, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I couldn't take it anymore and had to give in to the temptation that kept on coming up. He should feel lucky that I waited so long to cheat on him. He had it coming one day or the other. Another thing, he shouldn't even try to make it seem like he's surprised you don't marry a woman then suddenly try to change her. It's not your place and it can never be your place to do that. I'm my own person and he was very well aware of this before we got married. We had no prior conversation that stated I wasn't good enough or I had to be someone else to please him and his annoying family. So why did everything suddenly get thrown on me? My name is Anastasia and I'm a 24-year-old. I'm 24 years old. I'm a dancer and I love it. I make money from it and I'm also a choreographer, so I get gigs to teach people how to dance. My husband is using this against me and wants to get me fired. I think it's better to say that he's been using this fact against me. My husband, Collins, is a 28-year-old banker. As you can see, he has a very different profession to me, which can make it difficult to be a couple. We made it work and got married. What's making me more upset is that we met while I was working at a party he was invited to. He literally spotted me while I was working, and now he's trying to say my job is bad. We exchanged numbers on the first day we met, but we didn't contact each other for it took us almost 5 months to exchange numbers because we didn't have much to talk about at the party. I actually thought he was my age because he looked like me in a way. Fast forward to the day we finally contacted each other. He contacted me first and asked me out on a date. I was less busy on that day and decided to go. I didn't expect us to connect the way we did. After 2 years, we got married. I was 23 when we got married and we've been married for just a year. I was just 23 years old when I got married. Of course, I'm still young and I'm not the most mature person and I never said I was mature. Was I ready for marriage before I got married? I don't know. I liked Collins a lot. That's the only word I'm going to use. Is love the right word to use in this situation? I've never been in love or fallen in love. It might sound unbelievable, but it's the truth. I've been in relationships and dated a few people I liked a lot. We spend a lot of time together, but it's never been to an extent where I felt madly in love with them and couldn't wait to spend my entire life with them. I guess I just felt like I could rely on Collins. I'd dated other dancers and artists before, but I'd never felt like they were as stable as Collins. I was mostly around kind of people, but it was never because I preferred a certain profession. So when I met Collins, I just believed that he was the right man for me because he seemed like the serious type. I also liked the fact that he was a banker. Dating a banker is far better than dating a dancer, or I'd dated artists before, but I felt like most artists aren't ready to settle down. I wasn't sure if I was ready to get married, but when I realized Collins was also ready, I felt like it was for the best. So I said yes, when he proposed and we tied the knot. I've always wanted to be that girl with I've never been one for traveling. I've often had to go away for work, but it's not really my thing. I love it, but I can't stop. I need to keep in shape, but everything because of my job. I told Collins I was ready to start a family with him 2 years into our marriage. That was the plan, but he didn't agree. Did I meet his family before we got married? I met his whole family 4 times before we tied the knot. They were well behaved throughout and never gave me any reason to feel like I was marrying into the wrong family. But 2 weeks after the wedding, it was a very intense situation. I'm not exaggerating. I don't think anyone else can understand what I'm going through. My partner comes from a very large family. When I say large, I mean that he has several siblings and cousins. His house is almost like an extended family because almost all his relatives, both married and single, live there. If you're wondering why, it's because his father was once very wealthy and built an extravagant house. It's quite large and has other houses on the property. I was told that he became addicted to gambling and lost a lot of money. I don't know how true this story is, but Collins told me that his father died 2 years ago in a car accident while driving drunk. After his death, most of the family decided to move into the house because they felt it was a good idea. It's a huge house and it could save them all the cost of rent. I know you're all wondering how this is relevant, but trust me, it is. After the wedding, Collins asked me to follow him to his family home for their annual meeting. I went because, of course, I'm his wife and I should. I tried to support him in situations like that, but I regretted the decision immediately when I got to the family house because I realized that they were just a big hurdle filled with bullies and people that talk down on other people just to make themselves feel better. I didn't understand why everyone felt like it was right to comment on my body. And then I had to change the fact that I was a dancer, which suddenly became a problem. His mother made a fuss about it when I visited them during the annual meeting with Collins. She kept on about how dancing wasn't a real profession and that I was just wasting my time and ruining I had to ask her why my profession was suddenly a problem after the marriage and why she didn't tell me everything before the marriage. That's when I discovered that Collins did not tell them I was a dancer before the marriage. I told them I was a nurse and that I'd graduated from one of the best schools. I was so surprised and angry that I didn't even know what to do. I couldn't believe that Collins would lie about my profession and paint me out to be someone I was not. It was even more ridiculous that he had to hide my true profession. Another thing is that Collins was ashamed of telling his family that I was a dancer. I asked him why he had to lie to his family and make it seem like I was a nurse when I was just a dancer. I'm a dancer and I'm proud of it. I've never been ashamed of what I do and I don't think there's a reason for me to be ashamed of something that gives me money. I earned my satisfaction and I didn't ask anyone for money. I would rather be a dancer than be unemployed. It was a bit much that his family thought they were better than me. It was just funny to see them living in a house they didn't even build. They're basically jobless with nothing serious to do, and they're squatting together to save rent. Yet they felt like they could dictate what profession I was into. If I had been getting judged by a multi, I would have felt bad if I'd been judged by a family with several people in different fields who were actually successful and made a good living out of it. But I was getting judged by a family that couldn't even afford to stay on their own. What hurt me most was that Collins just sat there and let them speak ill of me. So when I call him foolish, don't judge me for it. Every decision he makes has to be dictated by his mother. If I'd known he was a mummy's boy, I'd have run a mile. He was so indecisive and quiet. How do you sit down in front of your family and let them say whatever they want about your wife? How do you not say anything to defend her or make her feel better? It was like he made them believe I was a nurse so I wouldn't get quizzed by them and run away. Then, when he finally married me, he brought me to his house so they could charge me, and I know some women who'd tell me to just quit my job, but I'll say this now, I don't want any advice from those kinds of women because it just never makes sense. You met me as a dancer, and now you want to change me after we tied the knot. If I quit working and stay at home to be your perfect wife, just to shut you up, in less than 2 years you'd still be the same man telling I was just feeding off your money and bringing nothing to the table. How ironic is that? I certainly wouldn't want to be in that kind of situation if I'd quit my job. Collins and his family would still try to talk down on me and make me feel like crap, so I made sure I didn't make such mistakes or get myself in such a compromising situation. It was just not something I was willing to do. I was so angry that I tried to keep my cool, but I was really upset inside. I had to ask Collins why he thought it was okay to sit there and listen to people insulting my character. There was no good reason for it. He couldn't even come up with a good excuse. He just said that he saw some truth in what they were saying. I don't even know why I married a banker. Maybe the artists I used to date weren't ready to settle down, but at least they stood up for me when I needed them to. They never stood back and watched me get my character assassinated for something as trivial as being a dancer. We had a very long argument and I made it clear to Collins that I would not be changing my job or quitting it. I told him that I would remain a dancer and there was absolutely nothing he could do about it. After that day, it was like I unleashed a beast in Collins. He became his family's puppet and they tried to frustrate me. He suddenly got upset and asked me to go with him to visit his family. I realized what he was trying to do and decided to stop following him there. I told him I didn't want to go and that he could go alone. He tried to make me feel like I was being unsupportive, but I told him I didn't care. I finally got my piece of after I stopped going to his family house. I decided to spend more time at work instead of just sitting back at home and doing nothing in particular. I got a lot of gigs and shows that I had to work on, which was very fulfilling for me. After my wedding, my boss decided to give me fewer jobs because he felt like I would need to spend more time with my husband. I guess he noticed that I wasn't really feeling the honeymoon bliss anymore, and he left. To get me back to work, more people had joined our dance team, and they were mostly guys. Yes, you read that right. I saw a pit of guys in our dance team, and it was quite surprising. Most of them looked more attractive than they should. I actually anticipated going to work a lot. Yes, judge me for saying I found a few guys attractive. Well, that's the truth. I'm married, and I'm not blind, so I don't think it's wrong for me to say what I see. They were very nice, and they always tried to come and ask me about the team since I worked longer than they did. I preferred speaking to them because I literally had a nagging husband and his jobless family waiting for me after work each day. I actually started regretting the fact that I got married as early as I did. I still regret it. It's not something I'm scared of admitting because it's the absolute truth. When Collins noticed that I stopped going to see him, he decided to bring his family to the house. I'm even getting angry just by recounting exactly what happened. I came back from work one day only to find that his sister, mother, and 2 of his cousins were at the house. I was very surprised. It's not every day that you see something like that. I'd never brought anyone from my family to the house before, and he's aware. I've never tried to do that to him. I couldn't believe that he brought 4 people home without speaking to me first. I get that he's the owner of the house, but it would make sense for him to just tell me ahead of time. Even though he's not meant to ask for permission, I came home to a very big bag of crap. Those people have to be the perfect definition of shameless. I couldn't even stay in the living room and watch TV without them bringing up discussions about my own body and how I was too thin. I really dislike his family. I don't care what anyone says because it is what it is. Collins, on the other hand, just sat there like he couldn't see what was going on. How could I not cheat on a guy like that? He doesn't have a say in his own life and only does things that his family wants. He asked him to do that. That's the kind of man Collins is. I wasn't ready to take in any of their nonsense. I went to sleep in the room and waited for Collins so we could have a conversation, but he never came to the room. He spent the whole night entertaining his family. I know this because I couldn't even get a wink of sleep as a result of the unnecessary noise they were all making. I tried to shake them off and get to sleep, but nothing that I tried worked. He'd rather spend the whole night whispering and laughing with his family than come to the room to see his wife. I hadn't even started cheating on him back then, but can you see how foolish he was? Who wants to stay married to a mummy's boy? If you've seen the worst part of it, just listen to this. One day while his mother, sister, and siblings were still at the house, something very annoying happened. I came back home after a stressful day at work. I was only met by his annoying cousin's mother and sister. My mother told me she wanted to have a serious conversation with me. I thought it was okay to sit down with her and talk. Maybe it was as a result of the stress at work, but I completely forgot that she ended up asking me why I wasn't pregnant yet. I asked her why her son wasn't married yet, as she seemed to think I should already be a father. She also asked why I wasn't already a mother. I'm only 24, so I'm not saying I'm too young to have children. However, it doesn't make sense that I have to rush into things just because my husband is 4 years older than me. Besides Collins, and I'd already agreed with Collins that we wouldn't have kids until we'd been together for 2 years. I told him about what his mom said, and he said he wanted kids too and couldn't wait. I said I didn't want kids yet, so there was no way I was going to rush into it. I wasn't going to let myself be pressured into having children. There was a lot of back and forth, and I got tired of the problems in the marriage. I didn't make any moves to fix the problems because I didn't think they had anything to do with me. I'd always tried my best to try to manage his family, but they were so rude and annoying. Collins is a whole different story. I just got fed up. So, I cheated. I did it because I wanted to and because I felt like I was married to a baby. I was tired of the marriage, but I didn't have the guts to ask for a divorce because I didn't want to end up homeless, but I wanted to keep working and earn enough money to get my own apartment. I had a lot saved up before I got married to Collins, but after I got married I spent recklessly because he's a banker and earned enough money. I wasn't paying rent like I did before, and I was paying the bills, so I bought a lot of expensive things. I only started saving when I realized my marriage to Collins was headed for disaster. One of the guts in the dance team is my affair partner. We hit it off after months of being friends. We slept together 2 nights after my 1-year wedding anniversary. It's been a year since our wedding anniversary, and we've been together ever since. I never thought Collins would find out. One of his sisters, who's always been nosy, followed me to my dance studio and saw me kissing my affair partner outside. My boss knows about the relationship. But it's not his business, so he kept quiet. However, Collins's nosy sister took a picture and sent it to Collins. I got home 2 days ago and Collins decided to give me a fright. The house was in a mess and almost everything was broken. He was so angry that he kept cursing and screaming. He said all sorts of degrading things. I thought that would be it, but he sent me out of the house yesterday and burnt all my sneakers. He threw my things outside and locked me out. I'm staying at my affair partner's place now, but Collins is still after my job. I heard from someone that he's planning to. I think he's trying to get me fired and humiliate me. I don't understand why he's so invested in this. He made the bed and I just slept on it. It's a two-way street, but wanting to get me fired is excessive. I'm now jobless and it's all thanks to Collins. He wasn't joking when he promised to ruin my life. 6 months later, I'm still reeling from the fallout. Even after he sent me divorce papers 2 weeks later and I signed it, he made sure I got fired. I never thought my boss would fire me, and I was so confident, but I don't know what deal Collins struck with him that made him fire me. I trusted. I worked with my boss for a long time and I was shocked when he fired me. Collins also hired some thugs to threaten my affair partner and tell him lies about me. He sent me out of the house 2 months after my divorce with Collins was finalized. I was living off the little I'd saved up and was counting on getting spousal support, but I just found out that I won't be getting any spousal support anytime soon. Apparently, our marriage was just 1 year, and I worked and earned enough to be independent and wasn't very reliant on him. My lawyer tried his best. But we had to settle for very little now. Collins has 6 months before he has to pay me the little spousal support I'm entitled to. I'm broke until then. Collins really did switch things up to ruin my life. The mummy's boy decided to teach me a lesson, and here I am single and broke with no job. It definitely hurts.